Welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Sana Maqbool, with you at PTV World. And once again, in the show today, we're going to be taking a look, of course, at the political situation of the country and how it has been evolving in the past few days. We've taken a look at what has been going on with regards to the number game as to the no confidence motion that has been tabled on Monday. Voting is also expected by the 3rd of April, and we also will be seeing debate in the National Assembly tomorrow. With regards to the numbers, something that the PTI had been talking about, their support from the MQM seems to have been lost. We've seen that an announcement has come in where the MQM has joined forces with the opposition parties, which of course changes the numbers game to quite a bit. We've also seen that with regards to the letter that the Prime Minister had earlier shown to the public in a rally on the 27th of March has also been discussed. Parts of the content have also been shared with some of the journalists, and PM has spoken about how this is something that is important in the coming days and in the evolving situation, and how a serious threat exists to the country, and how the no confidence motion is also a part of that conspiracy. We're going to explore that, of course, in further detail as well, and then also take a look at the support of the political parties that the PTI continues to enjoy, and whether or not we're going to be seeing a vote in favor of the government. With regards to the international situation as Pakistan, we've also seen that a recent development has been with regards to Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi's participation in a moot on Afghanistan in China. He went on Tuesday, and this is going to be a 3-day conference, and it is going to look at the different ways that regional countries can actually support Afghanistan. In his address, Shah Mahmood Qureshi also spoke about how Afghanistan is a shared responsibility and that we need to be aware of the negative consequences that it is going to have on regional peace and stability if we don't really look at it in an urgent manner. It's going to be important to see the developments with regards to the US representatives, Russian representatives, and of course Taliban representatives as well, who will be part of the discussion in the coming days. That we're also going to be exploring in our show today. For this, of course, we've been joined in the studios by Raja Faisal and Farrukh Pitafi, and we've also been joined online by Ali Rashid, who's the leader of the PPP. We'll be joined by other members of different parties as well as the show continues, and I'll introduce them as they join in. With regards to what has been going on, of course, first I'm going to go ahead with what really has been happening in terms of the number game. Farrukh, if you could also give us a review as to where the government and the opposition parties stand as of now.
Right. As I told you yesterday, the number tally stood at 171 versus 170. 171 with the treasury benches, that is a reported number, and 170 with the opposition with the addition of Bhutani Sahab, right? And Aslam Bhutani was former speaker of Balochistan Assembly. Now he's an MNA. But now the number has changed because MQM, which had 7 members, have decided to join the opposition ranks. After that, the number should have flipped, and the number should have stood at 177. But that is not so, because of 2 MNAs who will not be participating. One is, of course, because of the murder of Nazim Jokhio, the MNA is AWOL, and he hasn't actually presented himself back in the country. The other one is Ali Wazir, whose production orders have not been actually produced, and he is apprehended. So the number tally at this moment should stand at 171, that is the opposition, versus 164. Can miracles take place? Can there be a tectonic shift? We saw yesterday and day before yesterday, especially in Punjab, something of the sort happened. But at this moment, it seems punters are not actually punting on this. They are not predicting some seismic shift.
All right. Let me also welcome in the debate Barrister Hasnain Ali Mirza, whose leader GDA has joined us on telephone line. Thank you very much, Barrister Saab, for joining us. I'll start the discussion off with Ali Rashid Saab. When we talk about what has been going on with regards to the number game, it seems now, what with the knowledge that we have that the opposition parties have the required number, we also keep on hearing about 24 dissidents from the PTI who will also be joining the ranks from the PTI to the opposition parties. Are you fully confident? Because, of course, as we see, as the situation has evolved in the coming days, there have been a lot of shifts, and till the vote, there are still a number of days left where more shifts can actually happen. And the PTI keeps referring to dissidents within the opposition parties as well. How sure are you of the dissidents that you keep talking about the PTI? Yes, Ali Rashid, I'm saying to you.
Yeah.
Did you hear my question?
Yeah, okay. I heard your question. I just
All
wasn't
right.
sure that it was addressing me. Yeah, well, we are pretty sure about all the MNAs from PTI who have decided to side with the opposition. And as far as the opposition is concerned, we are fully confident that the number game is on our side. And now the allies also, which were with PTI, like MQM, and not Q, but partially a few members of Q are also with us, from Balochistan, from the Baath Party, BAP, and the Jamhuri Watan Party, one MNA from there. All allies of PTI are now on our side, and these are allies which we initially did not even need. I mean, we have far more numbers than we need, and because we have around 24 MNAs from PTI who are willing to go against them, and they've actually come out on record, and they've come out and said so. Now, you're talking about the government saying that they're in touch with some opposition MNAs which might vote for them. That is really far-fetched, because I've not heard of anybody doing so, or nobody has come out and made any kind of claim like that. I think it's just some last few desperate attempts of the government trying to hold its, the ground, and I really don't see anything happening.
All right.
I
So what
think the
you're saying
government
is,
also.
since you have the confirmations from the 24 dissidents from the PTA as well, you're saying the number currently does not stand at 175. It stands for more than that. And where on record do we have the statements of the 24 PTAs who have joined you up the opposition?
Well, I think several of them have actually come out. Well, I'll start with the allies, from Balochistan. They've actually done press conferences, and they've announced joining and supporting the
But
opposition.
aren't their numbers already included in the 175 seats? I thought you're talking about beyond that.
Yeah, beyond that. No. Yeah,
Okay.
if you
Okay.
right now, minus all the defecting, MNAs from PTI, the number stands without them. It stands at this X amount, which is more than the opposition, the number that you're quoting. But the
Okay.
MNAs, which I'm talking about, I think the number will go above 200.
All right.
That's
Well,
what
that
we've
still remains
calculated.
to be seen, of course. Hasnan Saab, when we talk about what the situation is currently, of course, we've seen that there is a lot of reservations still from the PTA as well and its allies, especially after we've seen the change in Punjab as well. When we talk about the current situation, there still is a lot of speculation. A lot of things are not fully clear as to who has joined which side. What do you think is going to happen in terms of the vote on the 3rd of April? Do you think that right now we can say for sure that the opposition has the kind of numbers that we are hearing?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Sana. One position that we can be very clear about is the position of the Grand Democratic Alliance with its three MNAs who have given a very clear-cut stance from day one that we were with Imran Khan, and we continue to stand by PTI's government today. Or we may have our own issues to deal with, issues representing our constituency. But right now, with a larger interest in mind to save democracy in Pakistan, a fledgling plant that was planted just back in 2008, it still needs to be nurtured to establish its roots properly and flourish in the future. This is a debt that we feel we owe to the future generations of Pakistan, and such political adventurism that is taking place today is turning the clock back to the 1990s. Both of these parties have bitter experiences of each other hacking, one another's feet out from under them. And we've got the cases of Changamanga, of Swat, of horse trading, of whatnot, destabilization, and no government was able to complete its tenure until 2008, where Pakistan People's Party first completed its 5 years tenure. Then Noon League went on to complete a 5-year tenure, and now we hope for the continuity of democracy,
Right.
of parliamentary democracy.
Just to be clear, the GDS support for PTI is because you want to support the democratic movement in the country, and you want to support the democracy in the country to flourish, not necessarily because you support PTI.
Our support is based on a principled stance. It is not for, we are the only party that is not bartered for position or favor or fortune. We stand by a principled stance for the sake of continued parliamentary democracy in Pakistan. And we once again have requested the Prime Minister to draw his special and specific attention towards Sindh, where on a day-to-day basis we see clauses of the Constitution of Pakistan being disregarded as if they hold no value whatsoever,
Right.
as is the matter in the Nazim Jokia murder case, which I think we'll come to discuss.
Right. So just one last thing. So just if in the current scenario, if the situation was different and it was any other party in the government at the moment, your stance would still be with the government.
Absolutely, Sana. We, like I said, we stand by
All
the
right.
principle. Now,
Right,
I just
but
want to
this
say
is
that not every fight is fought to be won. Some
Right,
fights are
Barrister
fought to
Sahab,
make a point.
let me ask you another question. Because you are the GDA's parliamentary leader in Sindh, let me ask you about what happened with MQM. The news till yesterday was after Pervez Elahi Saab's move. After that, MQM was also on the same page. Actually, Pervez Elahi Saab also said it on record. What exactly changed in the last few hours of yesterday that MQM ended up with the opposition rather than the government?
In my opinion, nothing changed, Farrukh. If one looks at the political ground realities of the situation, the alliance of the MQM and the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf was unnatural from its very conception. This was bound to happen. They have to contest elections head-to-head against each other. They have an overlapping electoral constituency, and this presents itself with an opportune time, whether Imran Khan is to continue or not, for the MQM to depart its ways from the PTI and position itself to go back to the electorate whenever the general elections are to take place. Howsoever, in the process of doing so, I would like to...
All right. We'll continue the discussion. I have to cut you there. We need to go to a small break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the debate. We're talking about the political situation in the country and what is going to happen with regards to the no confidence motion against the Prime Minister. Hasnan Saab, you were completing your thought. Please continue.
Yes, like the MQM's coalition with PTI was bound to end in the manner that it has. However, I would like to congratulate my colleagues in the MQM on getting People's Party to accept a charge sheet against themselves and their own performance in the province of Sindh for the last 14 years. Now, according to the documents that some friends in the media have shared, which is the Charter of Rights signed between the two parties, it's an 18-point agenda. And if you look at the points, point number 7 is false and fabricated cases shall be withdrawn against the MQM. Now, who filed these false cases in the last 14 years if it was not Pakistan People's Party? Point number 8 is that there are development needs for urban and rural Sindh, which should both be addressed jointly. But it is the same Pakistan People's Party that has denied the Provincial Finance Commission from coming into being for the last 10 years since the 7th NFC award. Point number 9 is they've jointly agreed for a master plan of Karachi, the only metropolis in Pakistan. Why is it that in 14 years of provincial rule, Pakistan People's Party has failed to do so on its own? So on and so forth, all the way down to point number 16 is a charge against their own performance in Sindh. And it's a shame that within our political discourse today, we're all talking about the musical chairs of power. But we're not talking about the real problems faced by the people of this country, the real issues by the main stakeholder, which is the citizens of Pakistan, the citizens of Sindh specifically, where our lives, our property, our well-being is not protected by the state, but in fact it is a political party which has taken hostage the provincial arm of the state and is using it to deprive us of our basic human, constitutional, political and ethical rights. And I wish that that was the mainstay of our political discourse today and not this, not just a numbers game.
Yeah, Barrister Hasnan, as obviously you are someone who's a barrister plus a politician as well. So I believe you will be, a pro on constitution as well. I just wanted to know, is it democratic enough right now, the no confidence motion, right after when Prime Minister Imran Khan has even shared the content, the bits of the content with the journalists as well, and he's ready to share it with his allies as well and the parliament as well. Should it be considered as still being valid, the no confidence motion, or they should be sort of accomplice to the conspiracy?
Farrukh, obviously I'm here in the province, and matters of sensitive state security and that affect Pakistan's position within the Committee of Nations is not something to be taken lightly. And I'm sure that the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan Sahab, has not put this issue out in the public discourse just without thinking it through. So when there is a very serious threat, and that threat is visible to us on a daily basis. Even today, I would like to condole with the brave martyrs of the Pakistan army, the officer and the soldiers that embraced martyrdom today. And such events or acts of terrorism are taking place on a daily basis. We are in a state of war. Our national security paradigm is incredibly sensitive right now. I wish our political parties had shown that level of political maturity to put the national interest before their personal and individual vested interest.
Right. Let us also go to Mr. Ali Rashid and let him respond.
And we are going to go there. Just to clarify, earlier, Barrister Saab, you were responding to Raja Faisal, not Farrukh. I thought that you should know. Perhaps you are not watching, you are listening to the program. But I just wanted to clarify. Now,
all right, Mr. Ali, when we hear what Hasnain Saab was speaking about earlier, of course, with reference to the kind of price perhaps the PPP has paid to get the MQM on board, can you please also clarify on that? Like, what sort of a compromise has there been with regards to the charge sheet? And also, when we talk about the international conspiracy, whether or not that is going to change the way the opposition actually proceeds with the no confidence motion?
So look, I would like to add here, I'm sure like every person who is with their party has their point of view, and I may like my party and I may have the performance of the party, but the ultimate test of any party's performance in the province or in federal is elections. If you see in the past few months or in the past by-elections, PPP has actually been able to defeat GDA of a seat which they used to hold in the National Assembly. People's Party was able to defeat PTI in Karachi of a seat which they used to hold. So that speaks volumes of the kind of work or the kind of service that we're doing to the people of the city, province, or the country. So I'm not going to get into a discussion about which party is performing or which party is not performing. And as for the discussion and the agreement which we've had with MQM, this is, Chairman Bilawal also mentioned it earlier, that this is not, don't look at it in isolation. This is not just about the vote of confidence. These were things which we were discussing with MQM earlier. These are things these were ongoing discussions which we had not come to a conclusion to earlier, but yes, because of this issue which was there, things were fast-tracked and we were able to come to an understanding to work for the city, for the province and the country, and that's how things happen. As far as the foreign conspiracy is concerned, I think that's a sham. I mean, is it occurring to Mr. Imran Khan right now? He himself is saying this cable or whatever, the letter which he has, it's not very current. It's been there for months, if not like if it's not from last year, but yet he's bringing it up now when the vote of no confidence is coming. So I feel it's a bit I can sense there's malice. I sense there's misleading people.
Ali Rashid, if this letter wasn't that important, why it is a classified letter? Could you please explain?
Any cable which is sent through any diplomatic cable coming from any country and is communicated to the other country from, for example, if I am the ambassador of X country and if I'm sending any information to my country, that cable is going to be classified. That's
Right,
not,
and
that
but
doesn't, that,
with
that, that,
regards
that
to
is
you
no
speaking about it in
barometer
terms of a
or
sham,
benchmark
let's
of
say
which.
it's not, let's say it comes out very clearly that it's not a sham and there is an international conspiracy involved. What is the PPP going to do about it? What is the PPP going to do with regards to the situation?
Okay.
And
Let's see.
Ali Rashid Saab,
Okay.
just to qualify a couple of things, because you are conceding yourself that it might not be a letter but a cable, a diplomatic cable, that doesn't
Yeah.
undercut the fact that it was sent from somewhere to somewhere, and it did contain certain material that might be implicating the enemy or whosoever is conspiring. So you can't call it technically a sham, can you?
Look, I'll tell you something. Please tell me the way, no, I'm just saying the way it's being portrayed. I'm not saying that there is nothing in it. I'm not saying it's fabricated. All I'm saying is the way the magnitude of this entire situation is being blown out of proportion. I feel that it could be something which just as a normal cable may have come, but have we dissected it? Why has this not been presented in front of the National Security Committee in Parliament? Why has this not been shared with the military establishment? They're saying it, oh yeah, very recently we shared it with them. Although this is very old, this is, mind you, months and months old. It's being shared right now when the vote of no confidence is coming. They're saying
Ali Rashid, I just wanted to share a bit of content of the cable, in which if it said that if the no confidence motion is not going to be successful, then of course and Imran Khan remains as Prime Minister of Pakistan, then we will deal with Pakistan in a way that like the things we used to see post 9/11. These sort of wordings, they were used in that, and that has been shared with a set of journalists. Obviously, a bit of content which is shared, and this is what is appearing. I just wanted to ask, you being, People's Party being a democratic party known for democracy, known for fighting for democracy, if these things are proven in front of you, then what would be the stance of People's Party?
And by the way, the Prime Minister of Pakistan actually even mentioned Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in his speech day before yesterday. Did he not?
Of course he did. Of course he did.
Ali Rashid Saab.
Okay, look. Yes, he did. Look, all I'm saying is we cannot give our judgment, we cannot give our stance, we cannot give our perspective till everything is out in the open. If you will give things in tits and bits, if you're not willing to, divulge the entire scenario and situation and information, that which country is it, what kind of threat was, it doesn't make sense. Like, that a written letter will be written, or a cable why would anybody threaten anybody in this day and age by writing a letter? So something, is off. But that being said, if you are talking hypothetically speaking, if you're saying yes, if there is a conspiracy, and yes, there are some people to get people out there who are trying to harm Pakistan, then we will stand with Pakistan, we will stand with our army, we will stand with everybody.
Thank you.
Then we'll unite. Yes.
Right.
All right.
Can I give you some very interesting insight that was provided to me in confidences?
Okay.
But Chatham House rules apply, so I cannot tell you the source, but I can tell you what happened. The news is that until yesterday, MKM was on board, and Parvez Elahi, being simpatico with MKM, was on board as well. Both of them were actually working together, and they had ensured that they are going to vote for PTI's government at the center. But then something very interesting happened. One, Parvez Elahi Saab actually went and met with the Prime Minister, and there he was shown the resignation letter of Chief Minister Punjab, but that resignation letter was not forwarded to the governor. And because of that, and later on he was also perhaps told, as he pointed out on air, that he is going to first ensure that vote of no confidence will fail, and then he will actually get the CM-ship, right? And after hearing that, something very interesting happened. Rana Sanaullah went on air and he started actually complaining and he started mocking Pervez Elahi Saab. Listening to him, MKM decided that People's Party is more short, place to go for, and they went for this. That's why they actually were active late at night.
Okay, so basically you're saying that this hasn't happened because of the PPP's efforts. It's happened because of what has happened with Pervez Elahi and PMLQ and with regards to the PTI's mistakes. Hasnain Saab, when we look at the situation in this way, do we also see perhaps the support of PMLQ being shaky?
I would just like to address the earlier discussion with Ali Rashid. Tell me, is the a foreign conspiracy or a foreign supported funded conspiracy being played out in Pakistan? Is it such a far-fetched idea? Has it not happened before? Does the People's Party itself not claim that Zulfikar Ali Bhutto Saab's government was removed and his hanging at the end of the day was sponsored by unseen foreign hands? The removal of numerous governments of Benazir Bhutto and Nawaz Sharif in the 90s, did that not have a foreign element? The first and second Afghan wars and now the post-withdrawal scenario in Afghanistan, will that not have a spillover effect in Pakistan?
Exactly.
Why do we need to keep all of our focus on one letter? Is it not true that our soldiers and civilians are being martyred due to cross-border terrorist support almost on a daily basis? Is it not true that Kulbhushan Yadav was recovered from the territories of Pakistan in Balochistan with a foreign support base? Is it not true that just a few weeks ago a missile was fired well into the territory of Pakistan? Whether it was a mistake or whether it was to test our defense capabilities, the jury is still out on that.
That's a very good point. Because of all this din that has actually taken a back, has been placed on a back burner, right? That's a very good point.
The question that arises here,
is the opposition creating a political smokescreen and actually playing into the hands of foreign powers that may be? I don't know. I'm not privy to the contents of the letter. But right now, what I seek from my politicians as a Pakistani citizen is that level of political maturity to put our national interest first and foremost over and above our private, vested, personal political interests. Unfortunately, the opposition has not shown that level of maturity today.
Ali, would you like to reply?
Yes, I would respectfully disagree. First of all, is it not true that PTI foreign funding coming from Israel and Indian, which they've asked the courts not to show the details of? Secondly, how can you say the opposition is not being responsible? We've actually asked that please bring the contents of this letter or whatever document you have in front of the National Security Committee of the Parliament. We've asked them that we should have an in-camera session of the Parliament where we can discuss all this. What else do you want from us? If you're not going to tell us anything about, you're going to be so secretive about this entire situation, and we have no idea or no clue what you're actually talking about. Sometimes, I feel he himself, Khan, he's not sure what he's talking about. Unless you don't appraise us, unless you don't tell us, how will it work? Opposition has very open-heartedly said we want to talk about this. This is the issue, and we acknowledge if such conspiracy is happening.
All right. Thank you very much, Ali Rashid Saab. We're unfortunately out of time. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much, Barrister Hasnain, for being with us today as well. Of course, there's a lot that still remains to be seen. There is question marks on all sides, not just on the national games, but of course on the entire situation as well. And before we move on to the next segment, Faisal, I hope you've got your breath. When we look at what the situation is, do you think that this is something, when we talk about the no confidence motion, is something that can actually perhaps not happen? Is that a possibility for you?
And by the way, why are you breathless?
I had a bad throat.
Okay.
You should have said you leave me breathless.
Yes, Sana, I agree with you, and I believe in it, that if, Prime Minister of Pakistan, he has the document as a proof of whatever has been happening, and of course, the steps are already there. And if the past events are proven through that document, then of course, To me, I'm not a lawyer, but to my understanding, I think it should be rethought of by the political parties, all of the political parties, and the parliament should decide over it, that whether this no confidence motion should be moved.
Do we have any
further
legal grounds
or
for
not.
that, though? Farrukh, any idea?
I don't know.
No
Let me
precedents.
be very clear about these things. Look, when it comes to national security, I
security,
think
yeah.
it was pointed out very correctly that it should have been and it should be presented before the cabinet committee
Right.
on national security. Right. Having said that, let me also point out that there are many things which are missing, many parts. For example, one, we clearly have intent, declaration of intent in this letter. But how did all the pieces come together, right? Monies, what they're transferred, which account, where, what exactly happened. So what I will suggest at this moment, because this is clearly about national security, and another thing is going on, that is vote of no confidence, to separate the two, and both actually keep on moving on their own tracks, and then we see where we reach.
All
And
right.
it should be delayed, maybe.
Let's see
I
what
don't know,
happens. I mean, there are lots of
I think
options on
that
the table, but
democratic process, constitution is one thing, national security another, both complement each other, but both don't cancel each other out.
And we don't have any precedents in the past
Of
Not
what?
that we know
Of
of.
what? Of what?
of this nature.
of the
this,
no confidence
no
motion
confidence
actually
motion
being delayed or
where-
cancelled if
Yeah,
there is
yeah,
a
we do,
conspiracy.
we do.
All right, let's see what happens, of course, with regards to the no confidence motion and the political situation in the country. We're going to now look at the scenario in international politics as well, where Pakistan is, of course, rooting for Afghanistan. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has gone to China for a moot on Afghanistan to, of course, discuss this important situation and to talk about how it is a shared responsibility for all of us, and particularly the regional players as well. Farrukh, we've seen that Pakistan has made efforts in the past as well, and we've talked about the OIC, and the foreign ministers also got together very recently, and we've seen that there has been a push. However, there are a lot of things that still actually remain in terms of what really needs to be done about the situation in Afghanistan. Do you think that since the Taliban have come into power, the situation has been better because of what Pakistan has done?
Look, I won't be able to comment on the quality of governance in Afghanistan. I haven't visited there. But here's a very simple fact. Regarding whatever is happening in Afghanistan, my complaint, my permanent beef with my own state has been that we talk a lot about Afghanistan rather than my own country.
Right, you've said that.
You should be talking about me rather than Afghans. But of course, the situation in Afghanistan is still volatile. We know that economic collapse has been going on. And then there's the matter of girls' education that once again is in a reverse gear. So there are many questions which need to be addressed, and I think that a China-based forum that was taking place is encouraging Taliban to take their steps in the right direction.
All right, let me also introduce in the show Tom O'Connor, senior foreign policy writer at Newsweek. Thank you very much, Tom, for joining us in the debate. With regards to, of course, what is happening in China at the moment in our discussion as to the situation in Afghanistan, there have been lots of such fora and lots of such discussions on what has to be done about the situation in Afghanistan with regards to the Taliban regime, the humanitarian crisis, and of course the commitments that have been made both from the international community and from the Taliban themselves. But do you think that these discussions have contributed to actual value for the people of Afghanistan, and will this mood be any different?
Well, I think very little so far has really come to fruition when it comes to supporting the Afghan people. Unfortunately, with the U.S. military withdrawal from the country, there has been somewhat of an effort, it seems, to keep Afghanistan isolated, especially from the West. When it comes to China and Russia, there have been some more political initiatives. With China, there have been some more humanitarian initiatives as well. We saw recently the two first visits, really, from the foreign ministers of China and Russia to Afghanistan since Taliban rule. I think that is significant, but these countries also, of course, have their own reservations about whether this newly established or re-established Islamic Emirate will live up to international standards and prove a partner, even just on the basic levels of governance to these countries. But as for the U.S., I think that the seizure of assets, that still is a major, and the dividing of these assets, which are Afghan assets, is still a major issue for the country.
Right, and of course, the situation on ground is, of course, important for the people of Afghanistan as well. When we look at the Taliban regime and the kind of commitments that they've made with regards to, of course, inclusivity and then women education as well, they have fluctuated a lot in what they've done in terms of both. And we've seen that those fluctuations have obviously not contributed positively in terms of moving towards the recognition of the Taliban regime as well. With regards to the capabilities of the current regime in the Taliban, the kind of regime that we have in place and the urgency of the humanitarian crisis, do you think that there could be any way that we can move towards a direction in which we can talk about the recognition of the Taliban regime irrespective of those commitments?
It's going to be very difficult, I think, based on a few factors. I think that, well, we've seen that both China and Russia and even Pakistan and Iran to some degree as well have talked about some sort of regional consensus toward recognition. None of these countries want to go out and be the first and only country to recognize the Taliban government.
Especially before the U.S. does.
Yes, and for the U.S. side, I think it's even, at this point, it seems less likely that will be the case. There was some initial talks, actually very shortly after the Taliban took over, discussing the potential path towards recognition. I think there is a path towards recognition in the U.S. mind right now, but it's very closely linked, I think, to those commitments that you discussed earlier, whereas for the other countries in the region immediately, I think that there's more of a pressing need to want to work with Afghanistan because it is a neighbor.
Yeah, Tom, I just want to ask, consensus is there from all of the Troika Plus countries, of course, with the Afghanistan, that only Taliban can control any sort of terrorism that would hail from there in shape of ISIS Khorasan and many others that are there and affecting the neighboring countries, and they are a constant threat to the Western world as well. So isn't it the time that Troika Plus countries, they should extend a helping hand to Taliban regime because they are fighting against all of these miscreants?
Well, sure. I mean, we have to separate two different sort of threats that exist. One, of course, is the threat of that, especially the U.S. has talked about as far as commitment to certain human rights issues, commitment to stability within the country. But the other threat is the threat of international militants and terrorism. And that's something that I think most of the countries around the world see as the priority because it's something that could affect them. And so far, we've not seen a major rise in that sort of activity in Afghanistan that the Taliban is aiding and abetting. We've seen, of course, strikes from ISIS Khorasan. We've seen some other transnational militants stage attacks and conduct attacks, but that's something the Taliban is actively countering. And so, yes, I think that there is certainly a prevailing urgency in wanting to at least support the Taliban when it comes to security. And part of security, of course, is economic security. So, yes, I think that not just through military support necessarily, which I don't think the Taliban is necessarily asking for either, but through economic support and through ensuring that the Islamic Emirate, as much as it might not be agreed with by some of these powers as far as how it's being governed or its system or ideology, needs to at least remain stable to keep the Taliban in power and ensure that other groups don't fill that vacuum.
Right, Tom, since we are talking about transnational movements that might be actually based right now in Afghanistan, let me ask you about many others which are there. For example, ETIM and IMU, both China and Russia have concerns about them. Then Pakistan has about TTP. And then naturally, Khorasan is also, Daesh Khorasan is a huge concern as well. Why is it that despite having so many Troika plus meetings, all of them have not been able to come up with any kind of joint mechanism to tackle with all these terrorist organizations? Because they are very serious organizations and all of them have concerns. Do you see any bottlenecks because of which there might not be any movement at all?
Yeah, I think that there are conflicting national interests. Of course, I think that there's a consensus that any transnational or separatist group that resorts to violent tactics is a threat, not just to one country, but the region. But there are different, obviously, when it comes to ETIM, it's largely an issue of China's. TTP, obviously, one of of Pakistan. And ISIS, one of I think, a number of countries, predominantly right now. Afghanistan. There's also a number of Iranian separatist groups and militant groups that exist too. So I think that there needs to be an understanding that just because one group is targeting, let's say, primarily one country, that still is part of the same strain of militantism and separatism and terrorism that threatens the entire region. But we've not yet seen a strong enough,
I understand when you say
effort on
that each
front.
of them is actually targeting one country, but together, are they not like a hydra-headed monster?
Well, I think certainly that the prevailing threat there, the idea of a group taking up arms and wanting to either take a piece of territory, overthrow a government, certainly that is a shared ideology among many of these groups. And I think that, yes, I think that it is a common threat, if you will, for these countries. But again, yet we've not seen we've seen this outside of the Troika. We've seen this in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We've seen this in other formats that sort of are able to rally together some sort of counterterrorism coalition, but not yet specifically on Afghanistan, although the rhetoric and the talk is there.
Right. Tom, with regards to the Ukrainian crisis and how the situation has evolved, Afghanistan has taken a bit of a backseat. Do you think that in the following days, in the way that the situation actually evolves, will the U.S. administration not be actively going towards progressive ways to actually move towards the recognition of the Taliban regime, or actually moving towards them fulfilling their own commitments and going through that? Because when we see the Ukrainian crisis evolve, it seems that Afghanistan, as of now, with the way the Taliban regime is being engaged, even if it's not being recognized, and can go on for very long.
Yeah, I think that certainly there will remain, hopefully, at least some working mechanisms of contacts between the U.S. and the Taliban, whether it's direct or through third parties in other countries that have hosted such negotiations. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon, but whether there's any movement towards formal recognition, it's going to be, I think, a little difficult right now, because with the, as I mentioned earlier, the seized assets that the U.S. has of Afghanistan, if there is any actual effort to divide those assets and keep some of them, as it's been said, for some 9/11 victims. That's an extremely unpopular idea in Afghanistan and also many other parts of the world. So I can't see the Taliban really even looking to work with the U.S., even if it somewhat is in their own favor, if that measure is taken. And I think it's actually somewhat of ironically, a uniting factor in Afghanistan, but against the U.S. So I'm not sure how welcome the U.S. will be if they go through with that measure.
Right. Thank you very much, Tom, for joining us and being a part of the debate and giving us your insight with regards to the situation in Afghanistan. Of course, it is important to know that Pakistan, as has been highlighting for a while now, that Afghanistan and the impact that peace and security that Afghanistan has in its own country will have on the region and on Pakistan is very important for all of us to understand, of course. And this is something that perhaps is going to be successful in terms of this mood in China currently at the moment. With regards to what is going on in our country and our political situation, a lot still remains to be seen, and we'll see tomorrow what happens in the debate in the National Assembly. We'll have more to talk about at 7, so keep watching PTV WORLD and don't forget to watch the debate at 7 tomorrow.